Chapter 20. Hazard. Hazard felt like he was trapped in Groundhog Day. Every day the sun shone. Every day he'd follow the same routine. Meditation with Neil, walk on the beach, swim, read in hammock, lunch, siesta, swim, dinner, bed. He realized he was living the dream. He was in the picture on the screensaver that illuminated thousands of offices. He should be horribly grateful, but he was bored. Bored rigid, bored stupid, bored to death. It struck Hazard that he had no idea what day of the week it was. His whole life had been run by the tyranny of the calendar, the sinking feeling of Sunday night, the rude awakening of Monday morning, the neither here nor there hump of Wednesday, and the euphoria of Friday evening. Yet now, not a clue. He was adrift. Every day there'd be at least one departure from the beach and at least one new arrival, usually several, so there were always new people to meet. But after a while, those conversations all blurred into one. Where are you from? Where are you going next? What do you do back home? They'd just skate over the surface of the getting to know each other thing, and then they'd be gone. All these constant new beginnings, without any middles or satisfactory endings, were exhausting. Just a few more weeks, Hazard told himself, and I'll be strong enough to move on, to resist temptation, to go home. Hazard was spending more and more time thinking about home. Strangely, he wasn't thinking about his family and friends. There was too much regret bound up in those memories. He knew all about making amends. One evening, about a year ago, he'd had a phone call from a girl called Wendy. She'd told him, doing the steps. The conversation had been derailed for a while as Hazard thought she was referring to an exercise class. Wendy had explained that step 9 of the Alcoholics Anonymous 12-step program was making amends. So she was calling to apologize for having two-timed him a few years earlier. She'd not told him she was married. Hazard was a little nonplussed, as it had taken a great deal of scrolling back through old photos on his iPhone before he remembered her at all. But now he thought back to Wendy and her insistence that making amends with those you have wronged was crucial to recovery. All those bridges burned had to be rebuilt, but not yet. He was too far away and it was too difficult, so he filed it under deal with when I get home. In the meantime, because it was so much simpler and less entangled with self-hatred, he was thinking about Julian, Monica, and Riley. Had Monica managed to persuade Julian to teach her art class? Was Julian less lonely? And the question that taunted him most of all, had Riley found Monica, and was he the man of her dreams? Hazard felt like a writer who'd started a story, then partway through, his characters had just wandered off the page and started doing their own thing. How dare they? Didn't they realize they owed everything to him? He knew how unlikely a happy ending was, but sitting in his hammock in this improbably beautiful setting, totally removed from reality, anything seemed possible. Hazard basked in the unfamiliar warmth of having done something good. Something selfless, kind. He had, so long as Riley cooperated, changed someone's life. Monica was going to be so grateful. Not that he needed thanks, obviously. He threw a tanned leg out of his hammock and pushed his toes against the wooden slats of his deck to swing gently from side to side. He cursed himself for not getting Riley's mobile number or the address where he was staying. He didn't even know his surname. He wished he could just send a text saying, "Hi, it's Hazard. How's it going in London?" Although he reminded himself he didn't have a phone to text from anyway. He knew where Julian was, and Monica, but they hadn't read his story. and Riley might not have told them about him yet. But he couldn't bear feeling so left out. Hazard always liked being in the center of the action. That's probably what got him into this mess in the first place. Then he had an idea. It wasn't perfect, but it was just a small way to insert himself back into the story, to let them know that he was still part of the Authenticity Project. There were 2 minibuses on the island that did circuits of the beaches, picking up tourists and dropping them into the only town with its post office, bank, and shops. The next time it stopped at Lucky Mother, Barbara gave him a shout, and Hazard jumped on. The bus bumped along the dusty potholed track. There were no doors, just a canvas roof to keep out the sun and an open back. The air was sticky and smelled of sweat and sun lotion. 2 benches faced each other, 5 or 6 tourists on each one, some clutching rucksacks, some just beach bags. Hazard looked down the row of legs alongside his, all various shades of white, brown, and red, often covered in the raised red bulges of mosquito bites and grazes from the coral reef. They exchanged the usual, "Where are you staying? Where have you been? What do you recommend seeing?" Hazard had had this conversation enough times to know all the tourist sites, restaurants, and bars to recommend, both on the island and farther afield, and didn't confess to not having been to any of them himself, other than his little beach, and from time to time the closest town. He didn't want to explain why. I can't trust myself. The bus stopped at the tiny ferry dock where a boat was waiting to take passengers to Koh Samui. There, a bigger boat could take them on to Surat Thani on the mainland. For a few minutes, Hazard wondered if he should just get on that boat. He had his passport and cash in the money belt he was wearing under his t-shirt, and perhaps he might have done it. He didn't mind the thought of leaving all his belongings behind in his hut, but he owed a week's rent to Andy and Barbara, and after all their kindness, he didn't want them thinking he'd deliberately done a bunk. Hazard went into the general store. This is where he'd bought his sarongs, his sun cream, shampoo, and toothpaste. Just inside the doorway was a carousel of postcards. Hazard spun it round until he found one that showed his beach, an aerial view. You could even just about make out his hut. Outside, Hazard sat at one of the store's cafe tables, drinking coconut water through a straw inserted into a large coconut, and watched the ferry from Koh Samui belch some new tourists onto the wooden dock. They chattered excitedly about the beauty of their destination, ignoring the boatman who was struggling with their rucksacks. Using a bureau borrowed from the waiter, he started to write. Monica's Cafe, 783 Fulham Road, Fulham, London, UK. To the lady who sells the best coffee in town. See you soon. Hazard. Before he could change his mind, Hazard went into the post office, bought a stamp, and posted it.